Hello, hello. Hey everyone. Thanks for coming out. My name is Daniel Tucker. I'm a recent transplant from Chicago to Philadelphia, and so everything I attend, including the things that I organize, are infinitely stimulating and interesting to me, because it's all new. I came to Philly to start some new grad programs and work with an existing studio art program here at Moore College of Art. Our two new grad programs are in socially engaged art. One is an MA called Art and Social Engagement that's oriented around administering, facilitating, organizing, participatory, and community art projects. And then we have a community practices area that's an MFA in community practices, and that's around doing that kind of work from the perspective of an artist. Our existing studio art program, it has graduated 5 classes now, and we've got some of our alumni and current students here in the audience. So if you want to talk to me or any of them about the grad programs, please just grab someone, grab anyone that's an existing student. You want to raise your hand, existing students? Okay, grab these people, they're awesome. Okay, so I want to tell you just a little bit about this series that we're doing. It's called Studio Conversations, and it's run through the 3 grad programs that I mentioned, which are all called collectively Social and Studio Practices. We have a series of studio conversations, about 3 a year, and then we have a symposium that we're going to start doing in the summer that's a collaboration with the Mural Arts program. So that'll be happening at the end of July. But our next studio conversation, if you're interested in such gatherings, is on Monday, March 16th, and that's called Collectivity in the City. And it's a conversation between Amber Arts Collective, which is an art and design group here in Philadelphia, and then Works Progress, which is an art and design collective from Minneapolis. And so anyway, mark your calendars if that's something that you're up for. So my last order of business before getting the panel started is to introduce you to our moderator, our host with the most, and that's Dave Q, who I have come to realize in my short time in Philly of 3 months that Dave is a total man about town. He is involved in basically every project I come across, and so it seemed like he was just the totally appropriate person to facilitate this. Dave's an artist, he's a member of Practice Gallery. He's a project manager for Mural Arts Program's new Neighborhood Time Exchange initiative in West Philly, which is it's a year-long artist-in-residency program that's done as a collaboration with the PEC, the People's Emergency Center. And as an artist, a little bit about his work, it hinges on the theory that human behaviors in society are learned and not instinctual. And he makes performances that seek to pick apart and examine the implicit rules of our learned social environments. Dave's diverse experiences make him well suited to facilitate this conversation. So I'm gonna hand the reins over to Dave, and he'll tell you a little bit about why we're doing this, what we're thinking about, what we're hoping for, our wildest dreams, and then we'll go from there. And we'll wrap up around 8 o'clock. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Daniel. We're lucky to have you here in Philadelphia. So in planning, kind of like what we're really interested in this event, Daniel said something that I thought was quite profound. He said, the opportunities and resources available to artists in the city really shapes the artwork being made. This kind of changed my thinking. It's something that I know, but hadn't really thought of it that way, and to think of it that way really made me think of the Philadelphia arts scene as an ecosystem. That, you know, all of the organizations and the artists are organisms looking for resources and responding to kind of what's available and thriving in different ways. So it was, in that context, it was fascinating that there are just so many residency opportunities to present to you tonight, to share with you. So in addition to kind of asking the presenters to talk about their respective residency opportunities, we also asked them to focus on what about their opportunity was attractive from an artist perspective, and if there is some sort of context in the Philadelphia art scene or some sort of situation that they are responding to that made them kind of choose this practice of an artist residency. So our hope is that through tonight's lecture, you'll not only get a sense of all these new artist opportunities that are in town that you can certainly take advantage of as an artist, but also what it is about Philadelphia. Like, I guess starting to get at the question of what it is about Philadelphia that makes it such a fertile ground for this type of organizational practice, this type of opportunity for artists. And then, so we'll ask each of these groups to give us a short presentation. At the end, we'll have some time for questions. So let's go ahead and start with, I'll invite Nancy Chen from the Asian Arts Initiative up to the stage.
Hi everyone. Tag myself here. Hi, I'm Nancy Chen. I'm the Public Programs Manager at Asian Arts Initiative, which is located in Chinatown North. Has anyone been there? I know Fong has because she works there. Oh great, that's awesome. How did everyone end up there? Usually when I speak to a room this big, there's like 1 or 2 people, so that's exciting. I'll have to ask you later how you heard about us. But anywho, I'm here tonight. So Asian Arts Initiative, we're a community-based art center that of course focuses on the diverse experiences of Asian Americans and the communities of which we are a part. And we're also located in what some would call a rapidly changing and contested neighborhood that is gentrifying. There's new lofts coming up every few months. There's also a homeless shelter and also diverse community organizations that serve Asian immigrants and Chinatown residents. So that's kind of the neighborhood context for Asian Arts Initiative's work. And tonight I'm going to be speaking specifically about our neighborhood-driven artist residency program, which is called Social Practice Lab, and also sort of mostly overlapping with it, the Pearl Street project. So this is a pilot artist residency program that we launched in late 2012. And it's a pilot and it's very flexible, and we basically collect feedback from artists at almost every benchmark of the residency so that we can fine tune what's going on. And so far it's been a year-long residency, so artists from the beginning know that it's going to be kind of a long-term commitment, sort of depending on your perspective, with the neighborhood as opposed to like a week-long or month-long exhibition project. So although at this point I should say we're open to creating sort of micro projects or micro residencies within that cycle. So 2013 was the first year of the residency, and we're now in the middle of the second year. I should say Lee was part of the first year as well as Dave. And Dave is also a current artist in residence in this year's cohort. So full disclosure. And so this residency is all about engaging with the social dynamics of Chinatown North and some of the sort of complex socioeconomic groups that make their home or work or play in the neighborhood. So we in shaping the residency try to make it so that the artists are very well supported by Asian Arts Initiative staff, by what we call our local resource team, which are people that we've selected from local organizations based in the neighborhood, such as the CDC, the Community Development Corporation, someone who's a representative from the homeless shelter, from the Friends of the Rail Park / Capitol Hill Neighborhood Association. So we've pre-invited and pre-identified community resources in case the artists, most of whom do not live in the neighborhood, which is fine because a fresh set of eyes and a fresh perspective is always great for this kind of project. And then we also have a National Advisory Council, which are experienced practitioners, people that we've probably all read about in Art Forum or learned about in art school, undergrad or graduate school. And they kind of help us both to shape the residency and also to fine tune the projects as we go along. So the way that the residency works, as I mentioned, is a year long. It starts, the first quarter of it is what we call the community observation period, in which we ask the artists, they don't go into the residency with a project in mind. Well, sometimes they do, but we try to tell them to keep their mind open and to do community observation and spend time walking around the neighborhood, observing the rhythms, speaking with community members, community leaders, using the local resource team as points of entry into the neighborhood. and connecting with specific constituencies, and just using that time to just kind of soak in the neighborhood and get to know it. And then at that point, we start to shape the residency. And implementation can last anything from a few weeks to kind of the better part of a year. As Lee's group project, they created a mobile hot tea cart that did pop-up events from March through December of that year. So I have about less than a minute to talk about the objective of the artist residency and why we started it. So it was a real progression for Asian Arts Initiative that we basically wanted to get closer and closer to community-driven and community co-created projects where the artist would be facilitating and creating the structure for the work, but the community was really coming in and completing and co-creating the work with them. And I would say for Asian Arts Initiative, as we continue with our social practice lab, the sort of goal is there kind of has to be an intersection between the artist practice and the social goals and the artistic goals of the organization. So we're interested in finding artists whose work, we want their work to grow, but we also want them to intersect with the goals that we have of engaging with our neighborhood and influencing the social dynamics and building dialogue across a diverse swath of the community. So yeah, we continue to fine tune it as we go along, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Thank you.
So I'd encourage you to, if you have any questions about the residencies, to write them down. We'll be going through, each of the presentations and having an opportunity for Q&A afterwards. And if you're like me, you will not remember any of the questions you had. So at this time, I'd like to invite Lee Tusman to speak about the Hacktory.
Hello. I'm Lee Tusman. I'm an artist and a curator. I'm from Philadelphia originally, moved to California and New Orleans. I lived in the Czech Republic for a little bit. I moved back here about 3 years ago, and I've worked for a bunch of organizations. I make my living from putting together artist projects, my own art projects, writing grants, putting exhibits together, that kind of stuff. And I tend to blur all those kinds of things. So I've actually run a few artist in residency programs before. I did not invent the Hacktory's Artist in Residency program. I was hired to basically put it together. And it was funded through a grant from the Knight Arts Foundation, as well as through good old-fashioned Indiegogo or Kickstarter campaigns. And so we raised kind of the first round of funding that way, and then I was hired, brought on board to basically make it happen. And first of all, the Hacktory, what is that? What does that mean? Have people here heard of the Hacktory? A good bit of people have heard of the Hacktory. We are a artist maker space in West Philadelphia, dedicated to artists working with technology. And what we actually do, what does that really mean? A lot of maker spaces in this country are for nerds to kind of go in and build projects, do things with Arduino and soldering and microcontrollers and build things like that. And we totally do that and love that kind of shit. But we are also, as opposed to a lot of spaces like that, we have a fairly democratic outlook. We're trying to bring in a lot of people that might not have either had access to these kinds of tools or not know how to get started working with them. And when designing the Artist in Residency program, we called it Unknown Territory, and kind of took that to heart and decided we have a lot of people that would be able to use these resources but don't know that they could use them. They just need to get started. That's always the difficulty when you're doing any art project. How do you get started? We figured that was also the case for a lot of artists that might potentially want to work with new technology in Philadelphia. So we created two programs. One is for artists. We call this the Artist in Residency. The other one's the Fellowship. And the Artist in Residency is for artists that have been working in Philadelphia. They could be composers, they could be visual artists, dancers, choreographers, theater, could be almost anything. Someone that's been working for years but doesn't know, wants to work with technology and doesn't know how to do it. So we selected 6 artists in residence this year. It's a 6-month residency program where they come in, they take 3 classes. We give them a budget to buy supplies. They get one-on-one consultation. We have weekly meetings if they desire. They come in and work as a group on stuff and kind of give them advisors and ways to kind of build stuff. The second is a fellowship program that's mostly aimed at people that don't live in Philadelphia, that are already working with art and technology, They come in for 2 to 4 weeks. We pay them a stipend of $1,500, plus we have a $500 materials budget. They come in and they do a project of their choice. They're required to give a lecture or teach a workshop, and they kind of, they basically act also as advisors temporarily with our artists in residence and help them work on their projects, which has been really invaluable. We're just about to end this first round. It's been about 6 months. We have an exhibit opening next week at the Crane Arts in North Philly. The exhibit's also called Unknown Territory. It's December 11th, next Thursday, 6 to 9. And that's going to kind of show off all the products that have been built, both by the artists in residence as well as the fellows this year. One of the things I wanted to jump to a little bit is like, why does this exist? Why did this come to be? And what we were noticing are there are a few spaces in Philadelphia that you can work on art and technology kinds of things. One is Next Fab. That's a commercial space. Then there's Hive 76, which operates more, this isn't the right word, but more like a club where they have members that are part of it, that pay to be a part of it, and then they meet and work on their own projects. And our space is more open to the public every Thursday night. It's called Project Night. Anyone can come from 7 to 9, bring a project, and just meet other people working on stuff like this. But we wanted to create something just to get more people involved that are interested in exploring technology and that need a venue to do that in a community. It's also something that we think there would be a lot. Philadelphia is a very large city, as you know, and we didn't see anything like this out there. So that's why we came up with it and why it's been working for us so far. Check out the exhibit next week. I'll talk about it more in our group discussion later. Thanks.
Next, I'll call up Gina Renzi to talk about the Sanctuary Residency at the Rotunda.
Hi everybody. Bear with me, I'm battling a cold right now, so I don't normally sound like this. So my name is Gina Renzi. I'm from the Rotunda. The Rotunda is at 40th and Walnut in West Philly. Has anybody here been to the Rotunda? Heard of the Rotunda? Oh, this makes me so happy. Okay, I'm gonna hug everybody even though I'm sick. So we are an arts and culture community venue. We put on probably about 300 events a year. Concerts, film screenings, art exhibits, all sorts of things, youth programs, things like that. And what we do is we really like to work with people wherever they are. So we kind of listen to people coming to us, activists, artists, students, whatever. We help people to put on their own events. We give them money when we can. We help them promote. We help them figure out how to get audiences. And that's sort of what the Rotunda does. My larger sort of work is I work for the University of Pennsylvania. I work for facilities and real estate, which sounds kind of weird when you think about the arts, but it actually makes sense. I have buildings in my portfolio, if you will, that are used for the arts. They're off-campus buildings that Penn has sort of deemed for the arts. So the Rotunda is sort of the largest and the most active of those. And if you've been to the Rotunda or if you've seen photos of it, it's a huge space. It's like 11,000 square feet. But if you come to events, you see that most of the events are in the back space. It's a much smaller theater kind of environment. We love that, but we really look for opportunities to use the sanctuary space, which is the front of the building. It's something like 3 times as large as the back space where we have most of our events. So I guess it was probably about a year ago, maybe more, we teamed up with Bowerbird, who, if you don't know them, you definitely should check them out, bowerbird.org. They are a local nonprofit who promotes and curates all sorts of interesting events, experimental, genre-defying kind of music, dance, video, things like that. And they've been producing an event at the Rotunda for years at this point. And we wanted to kind of, I guess, go bigger, and we decided to kind of invade the sanctuary space, the larger space in the Rotunda, and create a residency program for sound artists primarily. So we also did some visual work with those artists, but we wanted to really open it up. We worked with, at this point, hundreds of musicians over the years, and a lot of people who kind of combine music with video, with dance, with things like that. So we really wanted to open up this huge domed space, which I'm sure you've seen the photo kind of going through the cycle at this point. So we put out a call for applications. I guess it was probably in the spring, and the artists, we chose 7 artists, and they spent the summer in our building. And it's just a big open round room. So we had to think about how to divide space up. They didn't have separate studios or anything like that. And they were making sound. So we figured out times that people could be in there alone, times they could be there together. We encouraged them to work together. We found that they started teaching each other different things. Artists were lending each other equipment, stuff like that. But really, in thinking about the project, we wanted to think about how we could make their lives a little bit easier. I think a lot of people in this room are probably familiar with writing for grants or applying for residency programs or whatever, and you have to go through a lot. And so what we did with the application process, this is something that we needed to talk about, is we made it as simple as humanly possible. We basically said, who are you? Send us some samples of your work. Why do you want to apply for this? And what do you think you might do? And that was really it. We had probably a 3-week call for applications. And then we probably got about 200 applications. And then even after the deadline had passed, we had more inquiries. So anyway, so we presented this work to the public in October of this year, so very recently. And we had all kinds of things going on. Site-specific video art that was actually projected into the dome of the space. We had a huge chandelier that's in the space. You'll see that coming up in a second. That's native to the space. It used to hang from the oculus in the room, and artists actually created porcelain pieces for that and projected onto it. We had people who strung piano wire from ladders essentially and created work. So the whole idea was to sort of think about this huge space in a way that has not been thought about before, kind of use the architecture, use the native acoustics, and come up with completely new work. So we plan to do this again. We're trying to think about exactly how. And we think that at this point, this is something Philly really needs because there's just so many people. There's so many people doing really creative things in the city and really melding kind of different genres. So we're going to keep going forward with it. So that's my talk. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. That was not cold inhibited at all. Next, I'll ask Lillian Dunn to present the Village of Arts and Humanities Spaces Residency.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lillian. I am the brand new program manager at the brand new Spaces Artist Residency Program at the Village of Arts and Humanities in Philadelphia. Standard show of hands, how many people have been to the Village of Arts and Humanities? Mark, I know you've been. We have one of our amazing artists in residence with us here tonight. That's great. That's really cool to see so many hands. So the Village, just a quick hit for those folks who don't know, the Village is a 30-year-old nonprofit in central North Philadelphia. It's around 10th and Germantown. And it was co-founded by Lillian and big man James Maxton, a neighborhood resident. Lillian was an artist who at the time, I believe, of her co-founding was working at PAFA. And she began a mural up in the neighborhood, and then that slowly, gained the participation of people in the neighborhood, and then that slowly grew into a series of murals and art parks, and now buildings that we own up in North Philadelphia. We provide arts education to hundreds of kids, free arts education after school to hundreds of kids every year, do land and corridor management up in the area, maintain the art parks, and Spaces is the Village's newest initiative. A quick overview of the Spaces program. I see it as a continuation of the legacy from Lillian, our founder, and big man Justin. The Village grew out of a collaboration of an outside artist and a neighborhood resident. It was when they came together that something really powerful happened, and that art became a vehicle for people in the neighborhood to express themselves, to imagine new possibilities for themselves, and to grow personally and politically. So the Spaces program is a 6-month residency that invites artists. Our first cycle was for artists only on the East Coast. Our next cycle will be open to artists nationally to come and live and work at the Village of Arts and Humanities and to co-create a project with a team of makers and thinkers from our neighborhood. The question about what is the experience of applying to the residency like? What is it like to be there? The residency poses a really interesting challenge in that we are asking folks to come and live and truly become a neighbor with us. That is one of the most important aspects of the residency. And so we are providing an opportunity to become a community member for 6 months. You know, when you leave the village, hopefully the village will stay with you and you will maintain those relationships for the rest of your life, as well as learning what it's like to work intensively in community with a group of people and to push your own facilitation and creation practice. Because the residency is dependent on such close relationships, fit is a really important part of who we choose for the residency. And so our residencies started in June, the final one will end in January, and our next cycle of residencies will open in the following June, with a call going out this winter for new proposals. And our next round of proposals is going to focus very heavily on the artists rather than the idea. The artists, your process, your worldview, your understanding of how power and art can work together, that is what's going to determine a successful residency for us. And the question about, of creating a hospitable environment, that's been a really interesting one, to bring artists from outside of our neighborhood, which has experienced decades of disinvestment and is scarce in many resources that artists would like to have, including just the ability to walk around outside at night. We are working on how to create a hospitable and creative environment in a material sense, as well as making sure that we have the access to the project management resources that they need. I think that it's an incredibly hospitable place in terms of the people on the street where the artists live are incredibly excited that the artists are there and become neighbors really quickly and welcome the artists into the fabric of that neighborhood. I think that the reason that we chose to move forward with an artist residency and are really emphasizing that the importance of folks living on campus, especially for this next residency, is in part because the neighborhood that we work in is very isolated from the rest of the city and from the rest of the world. And the way that the residency works is we bring new ideas and new people in, and those people can in turn, learn about the neighborhood and can bring news of that neighborhood to the outside world. One of the residencies that we recently had was King Brett, the producer. He's been up here in the background with one of our students, Jamar, on the mic. And his project was to record an album with artists from North Philadelphia and to start an online radio show where anybody can listen in on the sounds of North Philadelphia. And the artist residency serves to open up that channel between our neighborhood and the rest of the world. And I'm at 6 minutes? Oh, really? Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Lillian. Last, but certainly not least, I'll ask Billy Dufala to come up and talk to us about the Recycled Artist-in-Residency program.
My name is Billy Dufala. I'm a local artist and musician. I also collaborate extensively with my brother Steven. We're known as the Dufala Brothers. But more about RAIR. RAIR is an artist-in-residency program based within a construction and demolition waste recycling facility in Northeast Philadelphia in the area known as Tacony. So who here has been to Tacony? Awesome. All right. So we're relatively new, and basically we have 4 areas of focus, or what we would wish to accomplish as an arts organization. first is the residency program, the other one would be material sourcing, the next would be outreach and education, and then the last would be exhibitions. Because I'm a sculptor and what I do the most is visual arts, and the residency program is the first and foremost front burner. Basically, we're getting to the end of our first year of official programming, where we put out an application last fall, where we have 2 tracks of residency that people can apply to. One's the standard residency and one is called the Biggie Shorty. The standard residency is kind of more of the standard residency where folks come in. They have access to over 350 tons of material that come through this construction and demolition waste stream every day. The waste stream, I just talk about the flow of materials coming from all around the region. It's so basically we bring an artist in. They shadow us in the yard. And we kind of choreograph their experience through the facility. They have access to the entire grounds, but they're always with one of the RAIR staff. So because it's a very dangerous environment, and we don't want anybody getting hurt out there. And historically speaking, like people aren't allowed in these types of facilities because they're incredibly dangerous. So, but it's a wealth of material and inspiration. So anyway, the standard residency, artists are they pair up with one of the RAIR staff, and we pull materials all day long, and we bring them back to a studio on location where there's like a modest wood shop, metalworking tools, big project space, and smaller studios where that artist will have a smaller personal studio, and they can work from anywhere from a month to about 3 months, from about 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week, and then more limited hours on the weekends, and scheduling picking times with RAIR staff at any point in time. And then we skip to the Biggie Shorty, which is a little bit more of an experimental process where we encourage artists to work towards a document rather than like a takeaway finished piece of artwork. And this is actually a Biggie Shorty. Hey, that's a performance. That's something, we'll get into that later. Performance is something that we would love to do more of, but anyway. So with Biggie Shorty is you're working towards a document. You're not trying to make something and then take it somewhere else. They sometimes do show in like exhibitions or other institutions, but the idea is that you work towards a document and then at the end of it, it goes back into the waste stream. Not exclusively, but we afford artists the access to the entire facility. So, oh yeah. Thanks. So, with the standard residency, the artist can be there all day long and working in the studio. With the Biggie Shorty, we usually work after hours and on weekends when the facility is closed. So basically, we give the artist access to the entire facility, and that means they can dream up the biggest, craziest idea with whatever materials. And when I say 350 tons, I know that's a hard number to actually understand. It's a lot. So, and by volume, like wood is the most plentiful material. So there's like always something. If you want to think big, you can think big. It's our job as the RAIR staff to push the parameters and figure out what we can do. So if somebody wants to like make a 60,000 pound stage out of shredded metal bales and then have a concert on it, then we figure out how to do that. Basically, you can use the entire grounds for means of staging work and photographing or performing or whatever, and then at the end of it, you have a document that you walk away with. I guess I should probably address some of those questions too. So yeah, our mission is to create awareness about sustainability issues through art and design, and that is a very, very huge, very broad mission, and we're in the process of trying to focus on other ways of doing that. But really by bringing an artist or even individuals when we do tours to a facility like that, it's closed to the public. Most people don't actually get that perspective. So it was the ability to make this opportunity available for people. There's one other residency program in the United States that does this, to my knowledge. So it's a very unique opportunity for artists to explore. I guess I should probably think, okay, yeah. When applying, it's kind of thing where you have to see this place to really get it. Like if I talk about it, it doesn't really soak in. And even the images, it's not thinking of like creating this opportunity that's hospitable. It's actually a really harsh environment. It's incredibly dusty. It's blistering cold when it's winter time, which is actually, we only host residencies from the spring until the fall because it's kind of a little too killer in the winter. But anyway, it's when artists come there, we just encourage them to think about what they would do, kind of like construct an idea and then be willing to, when you go there, it's so much stimulation and there's just like so much excess, and you realize that this is just everybody's trash coming there. So you could very easily take a hard left or a hard right of whatever your initial idea in a proposal would be, and oftentimes people do. And we encourage that willingness to let go of what this idea would be that you're presenting, but also being willing to be inspired by the environment. There is so much that I could talk about as far as other things that were explained. It's not just about facilitating these residencies, because material sourcing is like, it's something that we can do where we don't have to bring people on location, and that's actually a larger part of it before we are an official, in a year of programming. We still do it as much as we can. Outreach and education, that's something that we're still working on and developing. And then, I don't know, exhibitions. We were invited to be part of the ICA 50 this year, which was really great. We do an application pool where we actually put out the call for artists, and that's awesome. That's the first time we ever did it. It was really exciting. But at the beginning of this year, we were able to solicit artists to actually come in and do projects, and that was really fun. But because I've been part of the art community for such a long time, opportunities for exhibitions sometimes come up, and then if it works out, it's able to be facilitated through RAIR. That's great. And then sometimes people apply with exhibitions in mind, so they would work on a body of work and then go and exhibit it, and then so yeah, as far as like other things, let's just get to the panel discussion. I think that's about it. Thanks.
Oh, read my mind. Thank you. Thank you, Billy. At this time, I'll ask everybody that presented to come up to the stage. The big reveal. All right. So please come take your seats on the gauntlet. Do we have a mic being passed around?
Chuck, do we have a mic, or should we just shout?
No, we got it.
Okay.
No, give me a sec.
Good day, man. That's all right.
Thanks to Chuck, everybody, huh? Here.
Hello. Whoa. Well, so one thing we asked each of the panelists to do, kind of to help kickstart our discussion here, is just to think about not only their residency programs, but also have a question in mind for the other presenters for one of the other residency programs, so to like think about themselves in the context of the space. Billy has not followed the rule of never sitting next to the speaker, so I'll ask Billy to go first.
I'm going to ask the other side.
Billy has popcorn over to Gina, but I'll also encourage, based on the show of hands I've seen tonight, it seems like this is an audience that has gone to everything. That's awesome. I love that. So I mean, we're starting with asking the panelists to start the discussion and ask questions of each other. But if you have a question in mind, please, I guess, raise your hand, and then the person with the mic will come find you, and then I'll direct that person as well. So let's just kind of get a discussion going.
Well, I can go first. Well, no, I was just going to ask you guys, like, because one of the things that we do is when we broadcast, like, and actually put the application out, it sounds like you got a whole lot of response. And I just wanted to ask, like, even if anybody, what's like the most effective way that you've actually broadcast this out to the public? Because it seems like this is not necessarily regional. it could be further beyond, but like, what is it that you, like, if anybody has one very successful way of doing that was effective?
So what we did was we used our mailing lists and we used social media basically, but what I think worked out for us was like I mentioned earlier when I was talking, we just know so many musicians and sound artists and people who were hungry for this sort of thing. So, well, also we had gotten a grant from the Knight Foundation, so a little bit of publicity around that did occur.
And money, you know.
Yes, money helps.
Sorry about that, right? So like money, because I'm an artist and I apply for residencies too, and I evaluate residencies. And one of the big factors is how much will they pay me for the amount of work I feel like I'm gonna have to do. You know, I'm doing art because I love art, but you know, how much money does a residency come with? And so thinking that through also helps attract people.
Are you talking about money as a way to get the word out?
Stipends.
No, money's not a way to get the word out, but you evaluate what the honoraria is. Access to resources is one of the factors you look at. Totally. I think it attracts more people. When you offer money, and the amount of money is important too, obviously, it attracts more people.
We don't offer any stipends.
I actually just spent the afternoon looking up, again, our RFP for the second round of Spaces is going to go out this winter. And so I just spent the afternoon looking up the ways that I was going to tell people about it. And there are some amazing, really terrible websites out there like artdeadlines.com.
That's terrible. That's a terrible website. Don't use that.
So I was like, do people actually use any of these? Yeah, and I think that I was kind of thinking, you know, it's really going to be about finding people like Dave, the 9/10, people who know people who are really good. 'Cause it's also not just about how do the most eyes see it, but how are you getting out to people who really get it. And so I think that building up a base, you know, something that we need to do as a new program is building a base of artists and curators who, you know, understand what we're getting at.
But there's also like very distinct websites and like channels for residency information, which is probably helpful for you guys if you're considering applying for them.
Yeah.
So the clear ones are eArt Now. That it comes out of Europe, and that lists like residencies all over the world.
Do you have to pay to advertise on it?
The first time you advertise on it, I think is free, or the first 3 times when they charge.
Right, yeah.
Does anyone know? Is that right? And then it's 50 euros after that. eArt Now. If you're looking for primarily, look, everyone's writing this down. If you're looking for Philadelphia-based artists, it's Facebook, right? And it's your networks. That's how you find out about this stuff. That's how you're going to get it. So yeah, sorry, eArt Now. Residencies Unlimited or Residency Unlimited is a website and also an email list. That one I believe is free to register your thing on. If you use those 2 websites, you will hit all over the world. Those aren't useful for Philly so much. And then NYFA is the third one, NYFA, I think it's .org. The New York Foundation for the Arts is where people list jobs and residencies and opportunities. If you hit, my opinion, which is very official, is that if you use those 3 websites, you will hit a ton of people. You know, and that's as of today, December 2014. There's probably other websites out there. That's where, when I'm looking for residencies and opportunities, that's what I'm looking for when I advertise. That's what I use.
I feel like on this note, I have a question, I think for you guys, and also definitely for Billy and Lee, and possibly Louise too. But so I'm a program manager for almost 4 years at Asian Arts Initiative, and outside of work, I'm a printmaker, but I've never done an artist residency myself. And my only experience is coordinating a social practice lab, experimental, you know, socially based artist residency. So I've been told that the conventional or the standard artist residency is the artist gets a studio, they spend half the time of the residency making work on their own, and the other half is structured time that the organization or the host organizes for them. So I'm just curious, social practice aside, like as an artist, for anyone who has done a residency, like what is your dream residency, and what is like, if you could write a residency experience, like what does that mean for you?
To get paid, get fed, and have a lot of time and access to resources and opportunities if you want them, but not necessarily have to be forced into something that you don't necessarily want to do, and just free time to create. Ideal for me.
So paid, fed, place to live, time and resources to create.
Free meals are great, and then food budgets housing too. Yeah.
Right.
So in addition to the Rotunda, I also run the 40th Street Artist-in-Residence program, and there are a number of alum out in the audience, and actually Lee was part of the program in the very beginning. So what that program does is, it is based in West Philly. We have 2 buildings that Penn owns. I mentioned earlier that my job is to sort of animate spaces that Penn owns that are off campus. And we have these 2 old houses, and we have studios in those, so what used to be bedrooms and stuff are now studios. We have a very modest gallery space. We have a little wood shop. And so artists come, they have to be closely tied to West Philly. They have to have had experience in community outreach work, and they apply to us. They get a year of free studio space. They get money for supplies for their outreach project. They get a month to curate the gallery. And they have other opportunities to curate, shows with each other. Every year we do a show called Friends and Neighbors, where we bring artists that they invited to come and exhibit. So one thing that we, just going back to how you spread the word and stuff like that, one thing that we have found is very effective is to just constantly remain in front of people's faces and remain part of the community. So the way that we accept new artists is we ask former artists to come and help us look over all of the applications. And it's really important to me that that continues. In the beginning of the project, or the beginning of the residency, it was a nomination based, and then when I came in, I made it an open call. So continuing with that, we welcome people back every year. We also have people in the community who help us to select the artists. So, it's kind of like everybody's still around in West Philly. We want to see the program grow. So it's amazing what some of those artists have done. And I think just with that encouragement all year long, and we let them work on their own stuff. We don't breathe down their neck, So I think that's really important. And their outreach projects are pretty open-ended as well.
You have some questions in the audience.
I can shout.
Please.
Just for that.
Don't shout, video.
Okay, don't shout.
Shout with the microphone too.
Okay, shout with the microphone. Okay, I hear you guys talking about your programs, and they all sound really fantastic. But I wanted to know, you talk about experimental programs and stuff. Are you open to non-conventional people though applying for your programs?
What's a non-conventional person?
Like a person who might have a little person attached to them?
What does that mean?
Like a mother with a child. It's really cool, a really cool child who does art too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, one of our artists in residence brings his son almost every time.
I unfortunately cannot, because it's not the most conducive environment for children.
Yeah, I hope that having a kid isn't an unconventional artist, but I think you're right, it's not necessarily hospitable to kids and families usually.
And I think that question kind of gets to another question that wasn't necessarily discussed, but it's there's this balance of the opportunity that you're presenting to these artists and the commitment that you're asking from these artists, and how do you, I don't know if there's a clear answer, but how do you manage both of those sides, and how do you manage the commitments?
That's actually the question that I had specifically for Nancy, but also for everybody. I mean, I think that in particular in social practice work, one of the things that we're learning is how do we meld, the organization's, long-term understanding of the neighborhood in which we're working and the people that we work with the insights of the artists, and with it, how do we balance an openness to their practice and the ideas they're bringing with our, perceptions and experiences of what works and what doesn't.
You're also bringing your own background and experience, and then there's also
Definitely.
the organization itself has its own goals.
Mm-hmm.
You might also be slightly beholden or somewhat beholden to a funder or funders that have their own goals. There's the neighborhood, which is 1 million people and stakeholders with their own things. You might have advisors.
Sounds like you're talking about social practice lab.
I am, but I'm talking about others too. I think all of us probably have that to some degree.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if there are any processes that you found useful in in incorporating all of those and finding ways for, many voices to be heard in that.
Right. Well, I think for Social Practice Lab, in the first and the second year, we've worked with the whole gamut of artists, including like emerging artists, all the way to people like Rick Lowe, who was in one of the photos playing dominoes. I mean, he's big in social practice, and I think something that we do and that we treat everyone equally is we do solicit feedback from the artists at like I said, almost all the benchmarks, to just ask like what could we be doing to better support your work, and just kind of it's a constant fine-tuning and iterative process for Asian Arts Initiative, and I don't think we're ever totally closed to, like, we never really say we're right about this and you're wrong and do it this way. I don't think, hopefully, but yeah, so I think for us, we're very receptive to feedback on an ongoing basis, and we have made major adjustments in the second year in response to some feedback from the first year. So I think for us, remaining flexible, but also like you were saying, just keeping in mind that the neighborhood relationships are for the long term. They're not for the course of a residency. And it's really helpful if like we're bringing in artists who get that from the beginning. And it's something we're working on. I mean, I think that emerging from the first year of Social Practice Lab, there was a little bit of turbulence with us articulating our social goals at various points throughout the residency, and some of the artists not necessarily wanting to get behind that particular section of the residency. We kind of, kept it pretty open-ended. So I think it's an ongoing process with the organization being more clear about our goals within the neighborhood and artistically, and also letting the artist, have the room to do their practice and grow. And we did get a lot of comments following the first year, since we worked with a lot of artists who are not social practice artists. At time and time again during the conversations, many of the artists said, I don't do social practice. I may not even be an artist.
Billy told me that. You remember saying that? Yeah, because I curated the Hidden City Festival. And
Yeah.
You told me that.
Yeah, and then next year we did the thing for home.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we got a lot of feedback from the, non-social practice people saying, like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to stretch in that direction. It was kind of scary, and I'm not sure if I'll do it again, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to have stretched in that direction. I mean, we worked with like a radio producer, a musician based in Austin. Those are the two examples that come to mind to the forefront when they were like, we don't do social practice. But the residency gave people the chance to take risks with growing in that direction.
So there's a gentleman with a microphone with a question? No, he's just holding a microphone. Right behind you. Yeah. Good, great.
Hi. I'm wondering if any of your residencies are thinking about already or open to the idea of creating like dual residencies that perhaps connect two artists more intimately, or a member of the community and an artist more intimately to work on a project together. I know that you mentioned Bowerbird, Gina, and I know they do something like that. Their blind date thing, they'll hook up two people to work on a project together. And you had also talked about creating lasting relationships. Seems like it would be a good way to do that.
I think all of us sort of do that in various ways, but it might not be formalized, or it might be. Like, I mean, I work in a similar way with the Hacktory's residency as Nancy's working, where we have a bunch of residents at once, and they're all working together. So in that sense, they have collaboration, and they are collaborating together and kind of learning together and building stuff together.
I think that when thinking about being hospitable to our artists, if they're coming from not Philly and living in North Philadelphia, providing connections to community seems like a priority to me, and so I've been thinking about what it would look like to have sort of a welcoming committee of artists, perhaps who are also in residence in the city, or artists who are new to our city when they come here. I like the idea of a dual citizenship though, some sort of exchange.
There's one question right there.
This is a question for Nancy and Lillian. You have both been working long-term in projects that are embedded in communities. My question is, do you find that the community gets tired of having these artists come along and, ask the same questions and, collaborate, participate? How do you assuage that, or how do you deal with that? Because, of course, there's a whole ethics about the way that we practitioners of the art field go into communities and our expectations and the expectations of our community, especially in situations where they are in poverty or vulnerable. So how do you deal with that, or do you think about that?
I think that's a great point, and I was just emailing Lee and Dave today with the phrase community partner fatigue, in that we, Asian Arts Initiative, one thing that we try to be conscious of is if we have like 11 artists or 4 artists or however many it is who have the same goals that we've given them or that they're trying to achieve through their practice, we try to have them first talk to each other instead of the 4 or the 7 people emailing, or calling up the one person down the street at the other organization. So, I mean, that's one thing we try to do is facilitate. We have a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations. And so just getting the artists talking to each other so that there could be just one ask instead of 4 or more asks. And I think that community partner cultivation is something that takes effort. It's not just like email someone once a season to ask if they want to come to your meeting. It's for me like taking note of what's that organization's like key events, what are their big things in the year, and like showing up and showing face at their events. And even if I'm not promoting something of my own, as a staff person of Asian Arts Initiative, I see it as, if the CTC is doing the Mid-Autumn Festival, then like I'm there and I'm, just there to be there. And I think that it's still an issue, and we're just trying not to fatigue people. And so it's an ongoing effort, but I think that for me, I just feel better about those relationships when I'm able to go to the other events. And it does take, carving out that bit of time to go and support other people for the sake of doing it, instead of just for promoting our stuff and handing out our materials, at those events. So, but that's a really great point.
Yeah, I would say that where we are, both in the development of the program and where we are in the city, and in our relationship with the neighborhood, we are early enough in providing this experience and reaching out to people in the community that has not had a chance to be a problem yet. That would be great if it, if we were doing so much that would be. We're still, tightly focused enough that it feels like we're just beginning and people are just starting to know that we're there. I think that for us, the program design, particularly, heading in, learning from the first cycle and heading into the second cycle, we took the time to bring some folks together and ask them, what would you like to see the next cycle address? So we asked people and artists who had worked with us in the first cycle from the neighborhood what they think the second cycle should focus on. And then we're going to be asking artists to specifically look at those questions when they suggest a project. And so I think that working continuously to thoughtfully ask that question of the people that we're working with, so they see people not coming in to impose an idea that they think is cool, but be responding in some way and creating a dialogue there. That seems like that's one strategy that we're using to try to make that feel relevant to the people in the neighborhood that we work in.
There's a question. If we could pass the mic all the way down. You got it.
Thank you. My question is for Billy. I'm really interested in your comment about your program where you pull things out of the demolition, the construction demolition, but then you said something about it going back into the waste stream. And I wonder if you could expound on that a little bit. I find that interesting concept and I don't completely understand.
I think, I mean, it's maybe not as interesting as you want it to be, but it actually comes from where, like, as a sculptor and doing big projects, a lot of times when you do bigger work, you're kind of shackled to the process that happens after showing that or exhibiting it, which is like storing. And the idea of freeing an artist from that constraint and being able to crack it open and do whatever they want and putting it back from where it came from, it's kind of like a zero carbon footprint project in a way that, like, you don't actually have to buy anything or contribute to any like greater waste. And that it was the idea that you don't have to, you can free yourself up from certain parameters to think as big or small or whichever direction you want to go. So it doesn't have to exclusively go back into the waste stream. We just like to make that an opportunity for folks because it provides them with more room to breathe.
When he says waste stream too, you might want to, what might not be clear, I didn't know this at first before I went out there and really understood the site. By going into the waste stream, what they're actually doing is industrial recycling almost. Is that like an accurate way of describing that?
Yeah, well, waste stream is a word, it basically describes trash after you throw it away. So all, like, whether it's municipal waste, that's a municipal waste stream. In ours, it's C&D, is construction and demolition waste. So yeah, and basically the facility is, it's construction, demolition, manufacturing. They take it, they get paid for it to accept the waste, and then they separate it and then resell what they separate on the recycling market to other manufacturers who process it further. And they divert 80% from landfill. So that waste stream becomes, part of it just does still go to landfill, but then part of it gets put back into the industry. So yeah.
Thanks, that clarifies a little, because I just wondered why you would put something back that if you took it out and you did something creative with it, why would it go back? And is it sort of counterintuitive to sustainability and
it is. I mean, I appreciate that perspective of it, but at the same time, I think it's also creating a way to look at it differently. And in the larger picture, I think that it's not something that people understand because they've never seen it. And being able to embed an individual in that environment is incredibly impactful, and it will change how they look at that. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where you don't look at it the same. And the idea of being able to do it without buying anything is good enough to be able to also educate that person and run them through the ropes of understanding what this is. And people have asked me that before, and I don't think that if you want to push it, yeah, that's cool. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of other things that we're exploring that are going to balance that scale if somebody wants to let it tip too much to one end. Because yeah, there's a lot of other avenues that you can explore. I think some of the things that we're interested in is swimming upstream in the waste stream and understanding like where the creative process actually intersects and has like the ability to be manifest in other industries, not just like the waste industry. Like people who create a bunch of waste, but there is no way to recycle it, so they just landfill it. But is there a way to create a conversation with these people who might be really like stoic in their ways and not changing because this is the way that works and you just pay to get the trash thrown away? There's opportunity there, and exploring that and being in that environment and having access to all of these different things potentially is what is really exciting. The thing that's at the front, on the front burner, is the residency opportunity, and that really, like I said, is like it really does spin out. Actually, I'm going to totally. You're going to say something.
I want to say something in support of your comments. I've been to RAIR as well, and it's tremendous. It's a tremendous experience. Within like 20 minutes of being on the ground, there is just so many things that you want to save because there's like rolls of unused, duct tape. There's carabiners that are brand new. There's so many things coming through that you just want to be like, someone can use this, but you can't because if you did that, you would fill up that space 10 times over in a single day. So I think that's part of where you're coming from, right? Is that like you want to rescue everything, and that's kind of the point. Is that our waste stream is ridiculous. Like there's all this stuff. Everyone should go there and save as much as you can, but you will not be able to save it all. Like
It's-
there are brand new things in the carton.
Every day,
Yeah.
and people throw brand new things away. Contractors throw immense amounts of perfectly good building materials away every day. And I think it's a way of also encouraging people to thoughtfully adjust their practice materiality-wise, I guess, because it's not something that people actually have to think about or are required to have to think about. Where I think in social practice, there's these relationships that you're building that like you have to be very, very sensitive to like burnout on community members and going back to them over and over and over again. Here, it's like, the only thing you really have to worry about is like not being so much of a hoarder and like not being able to move in your studio. I suppose that's a really bad example. But like the impact of it makes you question those things and consider them and adjust them accordingly. Hopefully.
I was just wondering more about kind of where you guys are each coming from. Because I know a lot of artists end up doing what they're doing because it's what they've always dreamed they would do, and some people end up doing it because it's a completely unexpected path. So I was wondering if running like a space-making residency program is like the pinnacle of you guys' careers. This is like absolutely what you want to do, or if this is just like right now a surrogate, like building towards something for you. It's like a surrogate for like what you really want to do is X, and this is getting you there somehow, or like what you really want to be doing in the world, and like how far is this program you're running getting to that?
I really love hooking people up and working with people and exposing them to things that they don't know about. And I also like creating opportunities and being able to facilitate for people in need of things that I can provide. But I would love to not be hanging out in the dump for the rest of my life. I would love to take like a really good, my own residency there for a certain amount of time. But I think this is another way for me to learn what this aspect of basically how this works. It's been an incredibly educational opportunity for myself, and I'm continually learning about. I didn't go to grad school, so this is kind of like almost like a weird equivalent that that's how I justify it in my head. But I'll work on it. I want to build something so it actually is sustainable and can be maintained if I decide to leave. Because I think it's a really good it's a great way, especially in this day and age, for things to be. I just think it's a great opportunity that if it can live on, that would be great, and I would be able to leave eventually. So, building something so it can provide for others.
We gotta get 2 more people on that question.
I mean, so my background is I started as a curator and then moved to doing my own art projects, which is maybe that's the opposite of other people, I don't know. Because I think maybe I was too hands-on as a curator and had my own ideas, and I think I've really blurred the boundaries between artist and curator all the time, and and I'm getting roughly equal commissions or jobs or things like that of those roles. But in terms of what do I really want to be, it is what I do, and I've been doing it for 10 years now, and I want to keep doing it. And I don't mean specifically with the Hack, I've been with them for 10 years, but I love running residencies, creating my own art projects in the community around kind of non-traditional art or art outside of the museum system, art in alternative spaces and things like that. So that's where I want to be, and it's where I'm going to stay.
I feel the same way. I'm really happy where I am, and I think that I've always been a sort of behind the scenes kind of person. So for me, I really like to help people to curate their own events. I really like to work with a wide variety of people. I love Philadelphia incredibly, and so I think there's so much going on. There's so much going on in West Philly in particular, and so for me, just to sort of be there and to be an advocate every single day is really fulfilling. And I'm not much of a performer or an exhibitor or anything like that, but instead I get to help people, give them tools, and I also think I'm pretty good at talking to people who don't know anything about what we're doing. The people I work for at the University of Penn are real estate people, and I have to very often translate things, like tell them what a certain genre of music is, or why an artist chose to make a geodesic dome out of plastic water bottles and why it's out front. Like I have to do those things often, and I think I've been pretty good because I'm pretty diplomatic. So I kind of figured it out, I guess.
Cool, thank you. I want to slip in one question to take advantage of what I feel is like a great resource here, because these are our minds and eyes and hearts that have reviewed hundreds and hundreds of artist applications, if not thousands. So I guess, can you share with us the secret of the artist applications? What is it about those ones that you've selected that have really stood out and made you select those?
Good images. Really good images that are succinct with what they're talking about in the written portion of the proposal.
That's a great answer. I don't think I'm looking for that. I think I'm looking, when I review proposals or grants or artist-in-resident applicants, I think I'm looking for, are they taking advantage of what we have to offer and creating something new and creating something interesting? And I'm also looking, there's some factors that have nothing to do with you as an applicant. That's actually the thing that's more important to say, I think. I think you guys know what to do about trying to present your work the best way or however that is. But the issue is sometimes you reject stuff and it has nothing to do with the individual applicant, and that's really hard to say and to know and understand. It could be that we have too many, I'll just say it outright. I might say, hey, we have too many men applying for this thing, we want more women. Or it's a bunch of straight white men and we don't want that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of, and there's other applicants coming out in a different way. Or it could be, this person really wants to be involved with this, and that's new and unique. It takes us in some new areas, and we really want to explore that. We also try to balance, like, hey, this person's super experienced and maybe won't be able to commit as much time or such and such, but this person's new and they could use an opportunity. And I don't know if they're going to do a great job or not, but I'm going to work with them and try to help them do a great job, and let's give them an opportunity. So there's no one thing I'm necessarily looking for. As long as they answer the questions and they sound interesting and intelligent and that their project proposals look interesting, because I almost always ask for idea proposals when I create a residency or a call for artists of some type. Although I appreciated a bunch of you said that, I think all of you said it could make a left turn, which, so also kind of trying to judge their flexibility. I mean, I don't know, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that what you said about as really taking advantage of the opportunity specific to what you're offering is also, and that comes out with how it's described in the application. I think, I know for us, it's like, we want free materials. It's going to be like, a kid in a candy store that's like, yeah, whatever, like that, make it more interesting.
Right. I would say I have a two-part response, both sort of relating to social practice as our residency. Well, with Social Practice Lab, you may not be surprised to know it helps if the artist is, social is a key word there. I mean, it's totally fine if there are artists out there, or if you're an artist who wants to be in the studio and, do your work in the studio. I belong in the studio. But I think, in my experience as the program manager of Social Practice Lab, it really does help if you're a social person who likes people and wants to talk to people, and your mindset is not, I belong in my studio. So keep that in mind if you're applying, apply to a residency that's a good fit for your interests. And then the second answer, just, I guess is more broad, is I feel like the work always has to speak for itself. So kind of going off what Billy says with strong images, whether it's images or video, we don't always read everything you say before we look at the images. So you might have very carefully explained, this 5-minute video, but we're going to watch the video or look at the pictures first, and that has to speak for itself.
I think that in addition to work that's excellent, conceptually and aesthetically, I'm looking to see in this next round, I wasn't actually part of the first round of selections, and so I've learned, from all the amazing gifts that the artists brought to this round, what, the key factors are to make a successful residency. And I think that showing that, it's a social practice residency, showing that you have really thoughtfully and creatively found ways to distribute authorship, while also working towards a coherent artistic vision. And that is a balancing act, but it's also, I think, that's also what's beautiful, that challenge is also what's beautiful about the opportunity of the residency. So showing that you've thought about your process for working in community. It's not just having a meeting or getting people together, that you've had experiences and that perhaps you've let that process evolve, and letting me, and the panel see how you've considered that process is really important.
I think for me, it's definitely, video, images, music, stuff like that. Like for the sanctuary residency at the Rotunda, in many cases, we listened to the work first, and then we read about what the folks wanted to do, partly because we knew that if they had interesting work already, they would be open to all sorts of things. They'd be open to working with other artists. They'd be open to sort of expanding their work. They would be sort of flexible working in, a 100-year-old building where, paint sometimes falls onto your equipment and it's really cold, and then it's really hot, and then it's really cold, and things like that. So, I think kind of getting a sense of people has really made a big difference for me. So seeing their work and then sort of getting a feel from that.
One last thing too, this is very this is the same thing. You ever work on a resume and you show it to a million people who have their own opinions? So we're all obviously doing that with our own opinions. Here's a real obvious one too. Like me personally, I'm turned off from international art speak. And that's for a few reasons of, it's my own biases and things like that. So if something sounds too conceptual without also sounding super interesting, or even if it's just too conceptual sounding, too theoretical sounding, I'm generally turned off, and I might jump to the next thing and just kind of, all right, done with this application. And that's
too artsy. It's just like,
it's not artsy because lots of things are artsy. It's just too. It's like, yeah, but what the hell is it? That's how. Again, that's a personal bias. And that's how I feel when I'm looking at stuff.
But I think that rings true. It's like you have to explain clearly in some aspect what you're doing or what you're intending to do or what you're thinking about. Like that has to come across.
Yeah, it can't be too simplistic though too. I've also had the opposite where it's like, hey, here's this great idea, blah, 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 blah. And be like, okay. I don't know.
Reminds me of a quote that I like, that's Baudelaire. Nothing embellishes what is.
Okay.
Think about that.
Silence. Flip the page all down.
Yeah, I'm actually going to the next step.
We have time for one more question, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about resources, and some of which y'all have mentioned: funding, time, space, material. So what makes Philadelphia, as opposed to other major or minor cities, the place for social practice?
Why did that?
Why Philly?
Why did that happen in Philly? Do you think? Is that what your question is?
What makes this residency that you're a part of special to Philly, as opposed to other places?
I think we'll probably all have different answers or ways we thought about this. Social practice sprouted here very in a big way for a bunch of different reasons, but including because there's very little money for commercial art here, so that means that other things have to happen. It was also an environment with a bunch of people that moved here that were super invested in that, including Nato Thompson from Creative Time Living in Philly. I moved back to Philly a few years ago and curated a giant festival of that kind of work, and I'm super invested in that. And I don't know, a bunch of people kind of noticing that as like, hey, this has been growing, it's big in the art world, and we have the opportunity to do that kind of work here. I think that's why it's in the air here.
I mean, it's a funding trend right now.
Yeah.
Like creative placemaking, spacemaking, and social practice are what's hot in terms of the national grant funders. So, at least we at Asian Arts Initiative talk about how that's not going to last forever. So the iron is hot right now. I mean, it's not a coincidence. Like the money is in social practice right now. And then also, I think Philly is very fortunate to be well supported by foundations and locally focused, regional focused grant funders, institutional funders. So thankful for that.
We also have we have a lot of buildings in Philly and a lot of empty buildings. This is how I've been able to do a lot of stuff with different kinds of organizations. And there's a lot of opportunity. It's a huge city, so a lot of opportunity to work with a lot of different kinds of people in a lot of different kinds of organizations and institutions.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking about the sort of vacant building kind of thing, or the underutilized building sort of thing. There are whole areas of different parts of Philly where there are just empty buildings, or buildings where not a whole lot is going on. Where I am, I'm at 40th and Walnut. I work for a gigantic university that has, how much money and endowments and all that kind of stuff. And then 2 blocks away are people living below the poverty line. And so you have, for me, I almost can't forget that sort of thing. And I am really compelled to think about how I can bring some money from this guy over here to that guy over there. So I think that we have a lot of haves and a lot of have-nots in Philly, or have-less, or whatever you want to say. So, and I think that we're also seeing new trends in who's investing in our neighborhood, so to speak, who's investing in real estate in the city. So I think that if we don't like the way certain neighborhoods are sort of turning, there are a lot of us who've been invested long enough that we start creating new things and trying to fund those. So I think there's a lot of spirit here. It's a very old city. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on for a long time. I don't feel like Philly has a lot of artifice like a lot of other places I've been to. So I don't know. I mean, I guess take that however you want, but it's a real city.
It's a blue collar city by a bit, but that's changing too. That's.
It's gonna take a long time.
It is.
I think you always have that.
Yeah. What is
Cool. There is information about everyone's residency at
right outside the door, postcards. And otherwise, if you're looking for, information on these folks, all their bios are in the back of the program.
Most of us are pretty approachable. You can also just come and talk to us.
Are we hanging out?
Sure.
They're hanging out for a bit. Great news. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you.
Yeah, screen's gonna come back down.
I'm